Hi there, welcome to Dead End Street. I'm Al. We are continuing with our top 25 albums of the year series. Um, we've mostly covered the 80s up to this point, but we are taking some time to start with the 70s here. We're going to start with 1971. If you're new to the channel, generally what I do is I pick my top 25 albums of the year. They're generally not the same top 25s you would read in like Rolling Stone or Spin. Um, so it's going to be a little bit left of center, not so much mainstream. So you may not find the same things up at the top, but maybe you might find something new that you liked, and we can have some conversation about what it is you think should be at the top. So that being said, 1971 was a very good year, not great. I wanted to do 71, get out of the way because I'm looking very much forward to 72 because it's one of my favorite years in the history of music. So um, here we go. I will start by prefacing I don't count live records or compilation records. So one of my favorite albums of the year is Free Live by the band Free. It won't be counted. If it was, it would have been high it would have been higher up on the scale here. But since it's a live record, I just mentioned it, and we're going to move forward. So number 25 is going to be Tago Mago by Can. This is the second um, full-length record by this German-based band. Um, the rhythm section of this band is outstanding. Holder Suke on bass and Jackie Liebzeit on drums are one of the tightest and most incredible rhythm sections I've ever heard. Um, if you've never heard them, a good place to start would be the opening track on this album, Paper House. Number 25 is going to be First Utterance by Comus. This album is so incredibly weird and dark. It's just so weird. I've never even heard of it up until about like 5 or 6 years ago. And I went and I listened to it, and I'm not so much sure if I like it that I'm just intrigued by it. But basically what it is basically like acoustic doom metal with orchestration and strings. It's so odd. I, I have to mention it because it's just so incredibly trippy and brutal, and the vocals are so strange. There's like growling and yodeling and all kinds of crazy shit going on. Um, it's worth a listen if you've never heard of it. You might actually really enjoy it. You might be like, "What the hell is this?" But I had to put it out there. It's just so weird. Number 23 is going to be "Mad Man Across the Water" by Elton John. Um, I'm not the biggest Elton John fan in the world, but there's a couple of his records that I do find cool. This is one of them, mainly because I'm a sucker for 70s pop songs with string arrangements behind them. Um, and this is one of those records. So Tiny Dancer, everyone knows that. A great track. The title track is a very good song on here. And lyrically, I think Barney Taupin is really at the top of his game. And Elton's band is pretty exceptional, I do have to say. Number 22 is going to be Straight Up by Badfinger. This is the band from Wales that was signed to the Beatles Apple label. They're forever attached to the Beatles for that reason. Yes, there are some similarities musically. This album was actually produced by Todd Rundgren and George Harrison, so you're going to get that, that Beatles sound in there. But they're a great power pop band, and they struggled to be taken seriously, and it caused a lot of heartache within the members. I think two of them actually committed suicide a bit along the way. But I think the songs kind of speak for themselves. Um, Everyone knows the hit Day After Day. They probably think it's a Beatles song, but it's not. Sweet Tuesday Morning is another great track on the album and a good place to start with Badfinger. Number 21 is going to be High Time by the MC5. If you're not familiar, the MC5 was a hard rock band, kind of proto punk band from the Detroit area. Very outspoken, very energetic live show. But they did have good music. Now this is the second one, and it doesn't get as much attention as the first album, Kick Out the Jams. And I get why, because it's not as brutal, but the songs are there. They probably should have recorded this one live like they did the first record to capture the energy, because I don't think you can capture the energy of the MC5 in a studio. But there are some good songs on this record. Number 20 is going to be the debut album by Electric Light Orchestra, self-titled. So this was originally just basically supposed to be a side project by Jeff Lynne and Roy Wood, who were still members of The Move at the time. And this record is really different than the other ELO records. It's really raw. It has like it has those strings that I was talking about, like these early 70s records have, but the recording is just so bare and raw. Like it almost sounds like it has a distortion pedal on the cellos. And there's a very naive charm to the record for that reason. All the strings are turned up real high in the mix. It gives it a pretty unique charm. Roy Wood would end up leaving the group after that to form Wizard. It was more like a 50s retro kind of style glam rock group. And we all know what happened with Jeff Lynne after this. Went on to superstardom. Number 19 is going to be The Faces with Wink is as Good as a Nod. This is just a killer rock and roll record. The opening track is Miss Judy's Farm, which is definitely my favorite Faces song of all time. There's also a great ballad on here called Love Lives Here. And of course, the classic Stay With Me. It was a big hit here in the States. Number 18 is going to be Songs for Beginners by Graham Nash. So Crosby, Stills, and Nash lasted one album and a second album with Neil Young. So it was really only two albums. Then they went on a long hiatus, at which time they all went on and did some solo records. This one is kind of the one that didn't get the amount of notoriety or attention. And strangely, I think this is the one that's the most intriguing. He wrote this one after his breakup with his longtime girlfriend, Joni Mitchell. Graham was bitter, sour, dour, and you would not expect that from the Our House guy. And to be honest, the least outspoken member of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. So, but is kind of seeping with raw emotion and reflection. Some standout tracks on here are Better Days, Simple Man, and Wounded Bird. The guitar and piano riff at the beginning of the track, I Used to Be King, bears more than just a passing resemblance to Jeff Buckley's Lover, You Should Have Come Over. I'm not sure if it inspired it, wouldn't be surprised, but I think it's worth noting because it's really uncanny. But this is a very good album. I actually like it better than Joni Mitchell's Blue, which came out this particular year. So, and here's where I get in trouble. I'm ready for the comments. You can bring it. It's okay. Number 17 is going to be Led Zeppelin 4. Zeppelin was one of the first bands that I really got into as a young kid. Still like Led Zeppelin a lot. I rank this album lower because I just got to be honest with, I'm just tired of hearing it. I realized the genius of the record. There's a couple of tracks like When the Levee Breaks, maybe Going to California, maybe, but even that I'm a little tired of. I could probably go the rest of my life without hearing this record, especially rock and roll. I can't stand that song anymore. But yeah, Led Zeppelin 4, number 17. Sorry. Number 16 is going to be Fireball by Deep Purple. So I guess we're hitting our little hard rock stride here. So I personally think that Fireball might possibly be the best Deep Purple record of the Gillan era. I'm just saying. Strange Kind of Woman's great. The title track, Fireball, is great. And probably maybe not my absolute favorite, but definitely top 5 favorite of the Ian Gillan era from Deep Purple is on this record called Anyone's Daughter. It's kind of like a country tinged song. It's totally different than anything Deep Purple had done up to that point, and maybe that's why I like it so much, but it's a really great song. Number 15 is going to be Nursery Crime by Genesis. This is the first Genesis record to feature the classic 70s lineup of Peter Gabriel, Mike Rutherford, Tony Banks, Steve Hackett, and newcomer Phil Collins on drums. The arrangements on this album are outlandish. The musicianship is freakish, and the costumes were even more freakish. But the musical box is majestic, and so is the closing track, The Fountain of Samasis. So we're number 14. This one will probably get me in a little bit of trouble too, but it's okay. Let me know in the comments what you think. Number 15. Number 14 is going to be Master Reality by Black Sabbath. So here we behold the first doom metal record. This album is insanely heavy for 1971. It's almost absurd. It is absurd. It's like a barrel of sludge being dumped on a goofy LaVey ritual or something. I don't listen to it much these days, but it does transport me back to a time of hanging out with my roommates back in my early 20s. And that was a weird, dark place. And so is this record. Number 13 is going to be Brain Capers by Mott the Hoople. So Brain Capers is where Mott the Hoople started to make the first steps to becoming that classic version of Mott. There's more attitude, more strut, whereas the previous records kind of delved into straight hard rock or folk rock, or things were going on in the late 60s. But as they trudge into the 70s, they start veering a little bit more towards that glam rock lane. And evidence of that on this album is Sweet Evangeline, which is great, and Second Love, which is a really cool song also. Number 12 is the self-titled debut by Thin Lizzy. Now, this record, the debut record, is not quite the twin guitar powerhouse that they would eventually become. It's in fact a bit more glam rock and folk rock hybrid. And it's actually, it's a charming little record, I think. Phil Lynot's vocals are raw and unfinished, but the songwriting is there, and so are the lyrics. The track Honesty is No Excuse, and Era, which I hope I'm getting the pronunciation right there, because I'm pretty sure it's Gaelic, are both beautiful, and as most of the record is also. Number 11 is the Kinks with Muswell Hillbillies. So the Kinks take a little bit of a detour from their last record, the big hit Lola, into their own version of like American country and music hall. It's a very unique record in their discography. Ray Davies, of course, immerses himself in the whole idea lyrically and gets into character in true Ray Davies fashion. But 20th Century Man is a classic Kinks track. Holloway Jail, Oklahoma, USA, and Alcohol are some of the better tracks on the record also. Number 10 is going to be Paul McCartney with Ran. So I'm going to say something stupid here. It's okay. I mean, if you give me your opinions, but it's something I believe. I'm going to say that Paul McCartney is underrated. The older I get, I find myself more firmly entrenched in Team Maca. Probably because the older I get, like, I relate to more songs that people are writing about that are like in their own experience, generally irregardless of what's going on in the world, He wasn't so self-consumed, as to believe that he was so important that the world was waiting for them to tell him, waiting for him to tell them what to do. He just wrote his songs, and they were always great. So with that out of the way, I listened to this record again, and would you believe that this record was utterly destroyed by critics when it came out? and by his Beatles bandmates, his former Beatles bandmates. Some examples. John Landau at Rolling Stone said, "This is incredibly inconsequential and monumentally irrelevant." Of Ram, Playboy magazine stated, "Substituting facility for any real substance." What is wrong with these people? I don't know. This is the record that has Too Many People, Dear Boy, Ram On, Backseat of My Car, and Uncle Albert. I mean, retrospective reviews have become much better. They're more like a 4 or 5 star review. But I got to tell you, Imagine doesn't have this many good songs on it. Sorry, it doesn't. You know. So number 10, Ram by Paul McCartney. Number 9 is going to be Brighter Later by Nick Drake. This record didn't click with me right away. I bought Pink Moon first, and I totally fell into that. It's just an acoustic and vocals record, very little other instrumentation going on, if any. When I discovered this one, with its full band and brass and string arrangements, it kind of caught me off guard because I was just so used to Pink Moon. But it slowly but surely grew on me. His guitar playing is just so incredible and unique and unmistakably him. Within 2 bars, you're listening to Nick Drake. Um, at the chime of the city clock, Hazy Jane 1, and Northern Sky are my 3 favorite songs in the record, but the whole record is definitely worth a listen. Number 8 is going to be 1 Year by former Zombies frontman Colin Blunstone. So the debut solo record by Blunstone is getting the reputation now, finally, of a lost masterpiece, thanks to the internet. It did pretty well in the UK, but as per usual, it didn't take off in the States. But the years have been kind to 1 Year, as it should be. There are a ton of beautiful string arrangements, great lyrics, but the star of the record is clearly Blunstone's voice. His natural tone is really something that other singers would die for. It's so rich but controlled and still emotive at the same time. The whole record is great, although the lead-off track kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. But once you get past that, I mean, I know I'm nitpicking here, but the rest of the album is really just great. Number 7 is going to be Metal by Pink Floyd. So after spending years in the wilderness after the departure of original frontman Syd Barrett, Floyd finally find their footing here, and it's pretty obvious when you hear it for the first time. However, Metal is not merely just a stepping stone to Dark Side of the Moon. It's got its own identity. It's heavier, it's moodier, and it's less dependent on a single theme. It's more individual songs, whereas Dark Side is one big work. One of These Days is an iconic moment in Floyd's history and in their songwriting progress. Pillow of Winds is beautiful, and of course there's Echoes, over 23 minutes, and yet I never lose interest when I listen to it. And for me, that's pretty impressive. Number 6 is going to be Killer by Alice Cooper. Killer is the perfect name for this album, because that's what it is. It's a killer rock album. If you watch this channel long enough going forward, you'll hear me championing this band on the regular. They get lumped in with this whole shock rock thing, and then later on with metal, which to me doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But they were much closer to me to Bowie or Bolan or to the Stooges or the MC5, but they were, more violent, I guess. Under My Wheels was completely and utterly lifted by Bowie for Suffragette City. It's pretty egregious, really. Be My Lover is overflowing with attitude. Dead Babies is a really dark song about child abuse. And the title track starts out bouncy, and then it gets imposing, and then it goes into a jam, and it just descends into madness. But Killer is a killer of an album. Number 5 is going to be Every Picture Tells a Story by Rod Stewart. Yeah, I know it's not hip or cool in, like, certain crowds to be a Rod Stewart fan, but I don't care. This record is a classic rock record. Um, this is also probably Ronnie Wood's best guitar performance on any record, and that goes for anything he played on with the Stones. Drummer Mickey Waller also puts in a performance of a lifetime on here. But this is also the record where Rod becomes a star in his own right. He's not just Jeff Beck's singer anymore. He's not Steve Marriott's replacement anymore. He positions himself as one of the decade's best songwriters and biggest rock stars. Maggie May is on this record. Mandolin Wind is on this record. Reason to Believe, the title track, Every Picture Tells a Story, and a totally smashing version of I Know I'm Losing You, which is performed by the Full Faces lineup, although they're not credited with it on the record. And this version, in my opinion, destroys even the Temptations version. Yep. Number 4 is going to be Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones. I don't think there's a whole lot more that needs to be said about Sticky Fingers that hasn't been said a million times, except that it's pretty wild that this record was accepted in the mainstream, considering how grimy and nasty it is. Other than the much talked about classics, Brown Sugar, Bitch, all that. I think on this album, the most under-recognized song on the album is Sway. It's a great song, great riff, and a great sway, which I guess probably might have gotten the title of the song. And Sister Morphine is awesome. Number 3 is going to be Love It to Death, again by Alice Cooper. Yep, Alice again. Man, the original Alice Cooper band, and it was a band. Alice didn't become a solo act until 1975, so this is an outright band. And they were one of the greatest bands, I believe, in this era. Every song on this record is awesome. Great rockers like Long Way to Go, I'm 18, and a nasty little ditty called Is It My Body, along with the 3-song suite that takes place on side 2 of Hallowed Be Thy Name, Second Coming, and the Ballad of Dwight Fry, which is just incredible songwriting and musicianship. Yes, the shows were phenomenal, but so were the songs. If all you know about Alice Cooper is the theatrics and the concerts, then I think maybe you might want to give them a second chance and listen to some full records. Number 2 is going to be Hunky Dory by David Bowie. So this is the record where Bowie became Bowie. Yes, there's a few records beforehand, and they were good in their own right. They had some great songs, but this is where he found that voice. Changes, Oh You Pretty Things, Bewlay Brothers, and I gotta mention one of my top 5 favorite songs on the history of Earth, Life on Mars. Just incredible. Keyboards by Rick Wakeman, the amazing strings, and Bowie's voice. Bowie's voice. There's 1 or 2 tracks on this record that keep it out of the top spot, but still, this is just the greatest artist of all time, just getting started, in my humble opinion, of course. And the number 1 album of 1971 is going to be Electric Warrior by T-Rex. To my ears, this album is perfect. Every note, every word, everything. Yes, this is the record that has Get It On, and unfortunately for Mark Bolan, that's as far as the States ever got with T-Rex. But however, in the UK, they had 13 top 10 hits, something like that, and 4 number 1s in a span of about 14 months. That's Beatle territory. Other songs on this classic album are Cosmic Dancer, Life's a Gas, Planet Queen, and Girl, all perfect 70s pop songs, all great blend of those beautiful 70s strings, acoustic guitar, hand percussion, just perfect tone on those electric guitars, and all produced by the great Tony Visconti. I got this record when I was 16 years old, fell in love with it immediately. And then I proceeded to go into my dad's record collection and take all his T-Rex records, and I never gave them back. Yeah, so that's it. That's number one. That's the top 25 albums in 1971. If you like what you've seen, don't forget to like and subscribe and press the bell for notifications. Share your thoughts in the bottom here. If you think I'm crazy, great. If you've got suggestions that were left off, we'd love to hear it. But we'll be doing 1972 soon. We're still doing the 1980s. If you're also interested in the 1980s, kind of like an alternative view of those years. We also do album rankings, our group rankings of certain artists. We take their records and we rank them from worst to best. And hopefully see you back soon. Thanks a lot. See you next time on Dead End Street.